Zora Neale Hurston has become known as one of the leading Harlem Renaissance writers. She was protected from racism from an early age by being in Eatonville, Florida for so long. In spite of the racist attitudes that white people held to African Americans about their place in society, especially in relation to entertainment, Hurston showed innocence and paid no mind to the offensive culture around her. It wasn't until later when Hurston realized the harsh reality of what society thought about people of color. But Hurston didn't cave to the pressure. She became righteously proud of herself, not because she thought she was better than anyone else, better than whites, but because she was the one and only Zora Neale Hurston.
The first quote is given during the beginning of the story. The significance is that Eatonville was a very important town. It was the only place she had lived. Her knowledge and life experiences all originated in Eatonville, Florida.
I remember the very day I became colored. Up until my 13th year, I lived in the little Negro town of Eatonville, Florida.
Up until Hurston was 13 years old, she lived in Eatonville, Florida. Eatonville was a town of only black people, since segregation was still legal at this time. Her neighbors and the people in her town did not disrespect her or make rude remarks to her because they were all black. But when she turned 13, she moved to Jacksonville, where the differences in race were very apparent. There were more white people, and they were rude and racist to her. The day she moved to Jacksonville was the day she noticed that people would notice Hurston by her color first, and her personality would not matter. Who she really was became unimportant because she was now seen as only a colored girl. Hurston spent most of her time outside playing. She was the only one in her town who had enough boldness to come out and mingle with the tourists.
The front porch might seem a daring place for the rest of the town, but it was a gallery seat for me.
In this specific passage, Hurston anticipates the white tourists passing through the town, becoming her personal entertainment throughout the day. Meanwhile, her community wasn't too fond of the tourists, making much efforts to stay out of their way. Hurston displayed boldness sitting on her front porch. However, Hurston is unaware that she too is just as much entertainment to the tourists. In this quote, we see Hurston conversing with the white tourists as they pass through Eatonville. The way she spoke was very entertaining to the tourists, and because of that, they did not mind Hurston going a piece of the way.
I usually spoke to them in passing. I'd wave at them, and when they returned my salute, I would say something like this: "Howdy do well, I thank you, where you going?"
As Hurston sits on the front porch, she views it like a motion picture by the way the white people are coming and going in their fancy clothes. She sees them as live-action characters in her own personal movie. Hurston looks at the white visitors passing by. She waves and sometimes even goes a piece of the way with them. Her language was very broken, and to those passing by, it sounded amusing because of her lack of education.
In the following quote, Hurston had several ways of entertaining the tourists when they came through the town to visit. She would sing, dance, storytell, and act. In return for her services, she would sometimes be rewarded from the white tourists with money.
White tourists in Eatonville liked to hear me speak pieces and sing and wanted to see me dance the Pars Mela and gave generously for doing these things.
This part of the story shows Zora performing for white visitors in Eatonville. The travelers only see her as a source of entertainment, a thing to gawk at, something to marvel and appreciate only as an object. Speak pieces means telling stories. Hurston's experience in Eatonville would be fascinating to white people coming through the town. Singing and dancing, key parts of African American culture, are expressions of art and freedom. While the white patrons give Zora money for her performance, her use of form in the text says the patrons care little of the actual substance behind Zora's art, caring only for the sake of being entertained.
In this next quote, Hurston wanted to be specific with whom she didn't receive money from by specifying the colored people in the passage. The colored people were her community, friends, and family, and they gave no dimes because there were none to give. Furthermore, they also didn't want her to entertain the white tourists by being foolish and dancing about collecting small change.
The colored people gave no dimes. They deplored any joyful tendencies in me, but I was their Zora nonetheless.
This quote is from the paragraph where she was a little girl and danced on her front porch for her enjoyment. The white tourists that rode through her town usually gave her some of their silver, but the black tourists saw what she was doing as a disgrace to her race. During this time, minstrel shows were very common, and they were very degrading to black people. Minstrel shows were performed during the 1800s and 1900s. Minstrel shows were a form of entertainment for white people that included dancing, singing, and comedy by actors in blackface. Black people usually served no purpose but to entertain in the 1800s, so that is why the black people deplore what Hurston was doing. Even though the black people did not approve of what she was doing, they did not disown her. She was still Eatonville's Zora.
In the next quote, Hurston has left Eatonville, the only town she knew, and has now embarked on her journey in Jacksonville. We see a change in environment and also a change in perception of Hurston. The way others view her in Jacksonville is very different from the way she was viewed in Eatonville.
I was not Zora of Orange County anymore. I was now a little colored girl. I found out in certain ways, in my heart as well as in the mirror. I became a fast brown warrant not to rub nor run.
After her departure from Eatonville due to the unfortunate passing of her mother, Hurston recalls being no more after she stepped off the riverboat that day. The Hurston she knew that was inside of her, and the Hurston her town and mother knew all too well, was now just some girl with colored skin. She feels it in her heart because of the hurtful things people were saying, and sees it in the mirror when she's beginning and ending her day. She refers to warranted not to rub, addressing her skin color, and how it is permanently stained. But because of that, she appreciates its demise, because it didn't break her, but made her, when referring to nor run.
In this passage, Hurston makes a statement that she has seen that the world is to the strong regardless of a little pigmentation, more or less, meaning it doesn't matter what color you are, only the strong will advance, and she doesn't concern herself with others' dealings, because she's too busy worrying about herself. I have seen that the world is to the strong regardless of a little pigmentation, more or less. No, I do not weep at the world. I am too busy sharpening my oyster knife.
In this quote, we see Zora exert confidence and hopefulness. She understands that you have to be strong no matter what your race is to be able to survive, because the world can be mean and cruel and is meant for the strong. Pearls are created from sand irritating the oyster. In this way, she compares herself and the sand. Sand was symbolic with her skin color and the adversity she experienced from it. She references the oyster knife because the knife can cut out the beauty that is to come of the oyster, the pearl. Hurston's life experiences shaped her into the beautiful pearl she became.
In the next quote, Hurston expresses when she feels the most colored. She expresses her emotion very vividly. She notices her color the most when she is not next to peers of her own, but around peers of the opposite shade.
I feel most colored when I am thrown against a sharp white background.
Zora's statement reads like an artist throwing paint on a black canvas, yet she takes a break from her story to tell the audience about her self-image. One meaning of this quote refers to Zora's experience with a majority white society. Being a person of color, she understands there are differences between black culture and white culture, implying they are in opposition to each other in their goals, their values, and their views of each other. Zora could feel she sticks out in the white society as a result of her color and of her background growing up in Eatonville. But the word sharp gives the statement the other meaning. A sharply divided society would be in contrast to itself, but only when it is resistant to looking out to the other side. White culture and black culture are different, but they are not exclusive. Zora is not for putting the two at odds. She is pointing out how whites and blacks can live together after laying down a superficial racial distinction.
In this last quote, after the emotional jazz performance, Hurston retreated to her seat. She had a conversation with her white associate that accompanied her and is stunned by his emotionless response to the performance.
Music. The great blobs of purple and red emotion have not touched him. He has only heard what I have felt.
This quote was after the great jazz scene. Hurston felt every beat, every rhythm, every change in tempo, every note, every sound. It made her heart pound, her temperature rise, her emotions soar. She became one with the music. Her white colleague only heard all of what she felt within her soul. The effect the jazz music had on him was not nearly as impactful as the effect it had on Hurston. No emotion came out of him. No emotion changed within him. The music was just music. For Hurston, the jazz filled her with every emotion, from surprise to rage to happiness. The performance was not just music to Hurston. It was a part of who she was.